Welcome to Beyond the Press Release, a production of Agoracom, in which we take the time to speak with small cap executives after they put out big news. For those of you out there who are interested in starting to really see the intersection of artificial intelligence and healthcare clinical trials, you're going to love this interview with Steve McCauley, the CEO of Empower Clinics, because Empower is a healthcare company with a developing R&D clinical trials division that includes 2 clinical research sites and 6 principal investigators. They operate what's known as a site management organization, an SMO, with multiple clinical trials in the pipeline. Additionally, the company has announced its intention to create a healthcare AI spin-out that's focused on enhancing patient identification, recruitment, and onboarding for these clinical trials. And their timing is perfect. Fortune Business Insight says the global clinical trials market is projected to reach over $95 billion by 2030, thanks to the expanding pharma, biotech, R&D pipelines out there. And Empower is positioning itself to play a real pivotal role in this transformative era of healthcare and AI. Steve, welcome back. We've got good, big news to talk about today, my friend.
We do, George. Thank you for being available and having me back on the program. We do have a lot to talk about, so I'm excited to provide a little bit more depth and color to the progress that we've made.
Well, here's the headline. Empower Clinics announces award of first clinical trial from a global Fortune 500 pharmaceutical company. Man, that's your quote says it all. We're ecstatic to receive our first awarded clinical trial. How big is this, Steve? I know how big it is because I'm a founder of a company, but man, how big is this to get to this stage?
Well, it's incredible for us. We are, just so thrilled to reach this milestone. We've been working at this sort of shift and pivot in our focus for, the better part of a year. So, this isn't something that just, showed up magically. It's actually based on, deep investigation, huge due diligence on the industry, and a real focus on where to put our attention, why to go to the markets that we've gone to commence, and how to focus. And we're, like I said in the quote, we're ecstatic about this. This is very important for us. We've gone through some challenges over the last number of months as we've kind of retrenched, really figured out what's a better path for us to much larger revenue, right. And really cash flow. That is a big part of my focus, is to find the segment of healthcare that really matches kind of who we are. And this certainly does, because we've always historically been clinic operators and managers of patients and medical doctors. But I really need us to have a cash flow positive approach to everything that we do for the future.
So Steve, since you're talking about cash flow, let's get to the question a lot of people are probably asking, which is, let's talk numbers. What is this worth? So there are a couple of different stages to talk about. First is the preliminary, I'm reading this press release, preliminary patient recruitment target is 20 to 35 patients, mainly from the current patient roster. That's with the principal investigator in Dallas, obviously, because they got their patient roster. Yeah. Let's start there first, then we'll progress. What's that ballpark worth to Empower in terms of cash over the next 12 months or so?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and we, again, through our work over the last number of months, we've really been able to get a lot of due diligence on the industry, and are starting to be able to formulate how this stacks up over time, what it does for revenue, what it does for margin, and the ultimate free cash flow that comes back to us. And the way that we think about it, and we want everybody else to think about it going forward, is we look at an individual patient who gets recruited into an active study, has an annualized value. They have a contract value to us, and we establish a contract with the pharmaceutical sponsor and a budget. And that budget details every single touch point that we're going to have over the life of a study with that individual patient. And there's a dollar value of compensation associated with every single visit, every single scan, every single lab result that has to be done. So depending on the type of trial, the stage of the trial, the length of the trial, the patient value can range anywhere from, say, 30,000 US in the low end, and we've seen some as high as 75 to 80,000 US on an annualized basis. And when you have trials that extend, like the current one that we've just been awarded, it's going to be 52 weeks of time, but plus an additional 20 weeks of follow-up time, which also has economic value. And patients don't all come on at once. We don't get 25 patients at once. They begin to stack up. So
Right.
we expect that this particular COPD study, we're going to be involved with this study for probably the next 24 months and generating ongoing monthly, quarterly, annual revenue streams. So when we look at this number of 20 to 35, that number came about with analysis of the existing patient roster of our principal investigator and filtering down to patients that are candidates. So they either are early stage of COPD or have COPD and are going to meet all the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So when we start to stack up that math, and we'll let our followers know, like we'll let people know when the first patients come in, we'll let them know when we get to 5 patients, to 10, to 20, and so on. And then everybody will have a bit of a sense of exactly what this means to us for potential revenue and cash flow. But that's the way that we stack it up. So we don't have our final budgets yet for the first award. That's going to be a next step for us, is to negotiate those budgets. But that's, that work's coming imminently. And so, we as an organization are going to have a really good sense of what the economic value could be for this particular initial awarded study.
So bottom line is there are a lot of variables,
Yeah,
for sure, but these are lucrative at the end of the day. These aren't goes out to the lowest bidder kind of things. These are lucrative. Is there any guidance, any kind of ballpark you can give? Let's assume, I know you got 20, 35. Let's take a midway point of 25-ish or something like that. Do you have any kind of ballpark that you could kind of help guide people at home just to get a better understanding of what something like that? And then we'll move on to, you can move that number up. But is there anything you can provide there? If you can't, you can't, but I got to ask regardless.
Yeah, I mean, the way to think of it is, if you take this sort of midpoint and plus or minus, whatever that variation is, but if you had, 20 patients who stick with your trial for the full-time period, and it's the budget's worth $50,000 US each, you've got $1 million over that trial with that block of patients. And to the extent that we can add more patients, like more successfully recruit, so not just from our one PI's patient base, but all the other PIs in that facility. So, we've got 4 seasoned PIs coming out of the one medical center, and they're a collaborative group. So we've got a bigger pool than just, the one, experienced PI. And then you start to look at, well, what other recruitment techniques can we use, such as, social selling or social recruitment, which is going to be a big focus of ours. I've seen, seasoned or long-standing SMOs use billboards, they use posters, they use mailers, a lot of good old-fashioned sort of guerrilla marketing techniques to bring awareness to this particular drug trial. And so we're going to be going down those paths as well. And I think these are going to be some of the unique value proposition that we're going to bring as a site management organization to not only this medical center, but other medical centers that we want to bring on board in other cities in the future.
And it's important for everyone to know, if they haven't seen the press release, there are no limits on the maximum patients for the trial. So that enables you to go out there, recruit. You're a digital guy, you can use digital means, all sorts of other means. So there's no max. So 20 to 35 is kind of like a good starting point because of the principal investigators.
Be a great starting point for us. And and having no max on our site, is for this COPD study. That doesn't mean that every study that we get into will have the same situation. Every scenario is different. Every sponsor is different, depending on, again, what stage is the trial, There may be circumstances with different types of trials where they say, look, we're going to cap you at X because we've reached our maximum globally and we just don't have room for any more. So, but we think in this particular case, they've got an appetite for more patients. They feel that we have the potential to deliver more patients just based on the resume of our principal investigator, our approach to it all, the depth of the patient base that's already there to work with, and really our ability to use good techniques to help with recruitment.
So we'll wait for that, but I love the fact that there's no limits on it, and I can't wait to see what kind of digital marketing you guys are going to entail. I know I've talked to you a little bit about that already, so
Yeah,
there's some great possibilities there.
it really is.
Next one, I love this quote because you're kind of points to the future. We continue to process multiple trial applications on behalf of our 6 current PIs, and as such anticipate additional sponsor due diligence, which I want to touch on here, site visits, and awards. So is it fair to say that this first award from a Fortune 500 European pharmaceutical company has given you the third party validation necessary to bode well for the other applications that you've told us you've made?
Yeah, it really does. It's just so important to become a known commodity, to build a reputation, to do it right out of the gate. And it's important not just for the pharmaceutical sponsor, but it's the entire kind of ecosystem. We need to look the part on behalf of the sponsor. We need to look the part on behalf of the CRO. We need to look the part on behalf of our PIs. Never mind our followers, our shareholders, and everybody. So this credibility piece for us is so important. And what we're seeing is that the studies and the applications are coming to us. We're getting through them. We have these first PIs are very experienced. And so as an example, one of the ones that's come to the forefront is we have a cardiovascular clinical trial that we've been working through the application process. And the process of getting through application and qualifying on paper for it, and then interviewing with the sponsor and then doing site visits with the sponsor, once you reach that stage, you're pretty much there, because the sponsor is not going to waste their time in going through those steps with you if you don't meet all the criteria. They're just simply, if you don't have a PI that has the requisite experience and the CV to be able to conduct it, and you don't have access to patients for a particular clinical trial, you're not even going to get through the application. So this next cardiovascular trial, we actually yesterday went through a sponsor visit, and a very successful sponsor visit.
So they actually visit physically Dallas Fort Worth to go to the that one clinic where we've got the multiple PIs there.
What they're doing now initially is they're doing virtual visits to be more efficient. And so that's kind of how they're working through this. In days gone by, the virtual side of it just wasn't done. It was all old school, binders and manuals and physical visits and but there's a lot better technology available today, and there's a lot better ways to do due diligence. So the initial ones are virtual, and they're giving you a kind of a positive nod that yes, the sponsor is prepared to support you. So that when we say you, that means us as an SMO, our PI, and that site. So that's what we got through yesterday. And so, that really from here leads to the actual written confirmation. So like on the COPD study, we went through those steps. We got that, verbal nod from the pharmaceutical sponsor. And shortly thereafter, they sent us W-9 forms to fill out. They sent us written emails and documentation to confirm that, in fact, we've been awarded. And we can even see it on their online material as well. And ultimately, all of these clinical trials sit out on a public government website called clinicaltrials.gov. And they're all searchable, and ultimately our followers, if they want to dig deep enough, they'll be able to find the information. So when I say, or what I alluded to in my quote, is based on actual events. We're working through a multitude of applications, and they're progressing. And what we're seeing now is that our PIs are even more engaged than ever before, because they're seeing success. They're seeing studies being awarded from massive global pharmaceutical companies. These are not small names. These are big names. And, I take a lot of pride away to think that, we can get this far and have the ability to get awarded major contracts from major Fortune 500 pharmaceutical companies. It's something that I think, I'm proud of. I'm very proud on behalf of my team. And I think we all should, as a group, be feeling pretty darn good about ourselves. We've got a ton of work to do, but it's very difficult just to get to where we are.
Yeah, to say as a founder and CEO who's struck partnerships and has failed at striking partnerships with bigger guys, it's incredibly difficult, and that's in the business content world. Forget about pharmaceutical clinical trials. That's a whole other level, Steve. So I tip my hat to you.
Thank you.
A little bit, look, devil's advocate, right? Because you're saying shareholders should be happy, should be proud. And I am, and I know, but it's no secret that the company's gone through its difficulties in the last 12, 15 months. So has the entire small cap space. Not that you're going to fall, not that you're going to use that as an excuse, but, our clinics was supposed to be clinic side of things for multiple reasons. It just sometimes things don't work out. Best efforts didn't work out. What would you say to shareholders today who might doubt this or be highly skeptical about it, saying, okay, you're making this pivot to clinical trials and you've been awarded this first one, but how do I know this doesn't end up the first pivot did?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, you're right. We all have suffered and struggled through this, me as much as anybody. I mean, the daily grind of going through the trenches like this, is taxing. Like it's hard. It's hard to be, get up and be motivated each day. It's hard to work through difficult times and deal with layoffs and cutbacks, but at the same time, having optimism to say, you know what, we're on to something here. All the fundamentals make sense. We actually have the type of experience to do this. And we see many other, small organizations around North America, but particularly in the US, doing this successfully. And they may be small, they may be, one medical center, one PI managing one or two trials at a time, but they make themselves a great living. The PIs do very well off of these contracts, and they're making a difference to drug development with the pharmaceutical sponsor. So, I have a degree of optimism here. I'm not naive to think that, this is just done and dusted and we can, put our hands up and sit back. Not at all. We've got a great deal of work to do here over what I think, could be, years of being a successful, SMO. I think we understand the formula, and we're starting to, be rewarded for our efforts. And, the revenue cycle is just around the corner. Like, we are now in a position to start recruiting patients for the first COPD study. So, the moment those patients start to get onboarded, and we expect, onboarding to take place in the fourth quarter. And if that's the case, then we're in the revenue recognition cycle commencing in the fourth quarter of 2023.
Yeah, and was really cool is that July 31st, you said you had numerous applications underway, and this came fast. This award came. I mean, we're not even out of September. In my books, anyways. I mean, yeah. I saw that July 31st, and quite frankly, I expected 4 to 6 months. because you got to establish yourself, you got to get your name out there, you got to hope that you'll get some of these guys to do site visits, and
Yeah.
boom, it's all done in 2 months. What would be a number, Steve? Sorry, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, I mean, I guess in a sense, you're right. Maybe that's the way it appears, but, we've been grinding behind the scenes very hard. Dr. Rabinowitz has been leading this for us, and he's really getting dialed in. And the other thing is we've seen a significant increase in engagement with the PIs. They're also getting confident with us. We're delivering the goods as promised. And what we've seen out of that is the other PIs step up their engagement. They're like, okay, oh, well, maybe I should pay a bit more attention here because this is working. Like, you're delivering
Right.
high quality clinical trials from, Fortune, whatever 100, global pharmaceutical companies. Like, this is really credible stuff. So I think we got this kind of combination of engagement. We're delivering the sponsor. We're looking really good in front of the sponsor's eyes, which in turn means we're looking good in front of the PI's eyes. And then what happens is everybody else is, well, I want my turn. Like, what about me? Right. So
Sure.
it's kind of the energy is contagious in a sense. And that's what I'm starting to feel. Finally, after we've had a good bit of negative energy, I'm feeling finally some, positive energy out of the progress of these awards.
Yeah, and I think some of the shareholders are feeling like that, because I've seen some comments online. Still some skepticism, but people are saying,
Sure.
"Hey, maybe light at the end of the tunnel here." What would be, and I'm feeling that way because I know that to get to this stage is the hardest part. Everything you did 12 months before that, or for 9 to 12 months before that, was work you had to do, but didn't guarantee anything until you got your first award. So now all that work has got your first award. So here's the question I'm leading to with that, which is, what's the number of awards that you think you need to get to until you say, okay, you know what? We are now in this club. Is it three? I'm thinking it's either 3 or 5. When
Um,
you get to a certain number and the industry just says, yeah, uh, those guys are, call them up. They're for real. Uh, let's get it.
I
What's the
think
number you think that you need to
I
get to?
don't know. I don't know what that number is. I am starting to think about this whole business model almost like portfolio management. And I've had some good discussions with other people that are in the industry. They've been doing it for 10 years, 15 years. And what I mean by that, it's almost like a thesis, is can we assess if we have a portfolio of clinical trial assets, how does that portfolio behave and perform? So take even just the 2 trials that are in front of us, the cardiovascular trial and the COPD study. Well, they're very different. The economics of each will be very different. The number of patients that we can recruit will be very different. The length will be different. So when you stack on multiple active clinical trials and step back and assess your portfolio, what does it look like? How does it perform? Where do you put resources? And I think we're going to reach that sort of approach of portfolio management in the future. The other thing that I'm looking at very closely is, can we understand the public SMO segment and their valuations, and then assess their portfolio and look at our portfolio, how it's growing and developing, to understand what our future value as a public company can look like and should look like. So to go back and answer your specific question, here's what I know. Of the 4 PIs in the One Medical group, each of them has stated to us that they would like to see themselves managing 2 ongoing trials at all times on an ongoing basis, whatever that means. So they have the ability to do it in terms of bandwidth. You can't take one, specialist medical doctor like a cardiologist who is in practice and say, oh yeah, I'm going to run 8 trials myself at the same time. That's not going to work, right? But they do feel from a bandwidth standpoint, because they're not giving up their day job here, right? This is an add-on. They've got the requisite experience to be able to be awarded a clinical trial. And it's a super incredible way to generate extra income for a medical doctor, because, medical doctors around the world, and particularly in North America,
Squeezed.
they're getting squeezed. That's the right word. They're getting squeezed. Payers like insurance companies in the US or OHIP in Ontario, whatever it might be, their payouts and billing codes are under pressure. They're stretching out the payment timelines. They're charging back, particularly in the US, and the operating costs are going through the roof. So that squeeze is taking place. So what we're offering here as a site manager is delivering really high quality new revenue streams to these medical doctors. And it's frankly very good money.
Well, Steve, look, congratulations on what I view as a really big milestone.
Thank you.
I hope the shareholders are watching this. We know there's a long route, but nobody's more motivated than Steve, and even me, as helping out with being the bridge to communicating and messaging. But there's no one more dedicated than Steve to building that shareholder value, creating something we can all be really proud of.
Yeah.
And look, this is a big first step, Steve.
This. Yeah, imagine this. And here's what I have in the back of my mind, and why I feel it's important to talk about these, even though we're currently halted. We're going to come off this halt and resume trading. I think we can create some real interesting pent-up demand, so that if we've got let's say we get this next award that comes through, we're now looking at cities like Pittsburgh, where one of my good board members resides, and she's very deeply entrenched in the healthcare community in Pittsburgh. We're looking at other cities where we've got deep ties to the medical community as potential new sites as well. So what if together we could all create this pent-up demand for EPW, so that when we do resume trading, all of a sudden that we've got interest and we've got enthusiasm, back into trading again. And we've always been known for liquidity. So, maybe this is our path to, get that, energy back into our stock, get it back on the right track and get it moving. I'm hopeful that we can have some of that. And, I just need everybody's help, and I need everybody's support. And I thank everybody for being patient with us.
And when you say that, Steve, I'll leave off with this. I'm reminded of, because I watch business documentaries all the time, and I'm reminded of, and most people at home probably know, and if they don't, they will now, that even Steve Jobs, on his first go with Apple, it didn't go according to plan. He had the best laid plans, he had everything in place, and it just didn't work out. And he got fired from Apple.
Yeah.
And he was gone for a couple of years. And then they brought him back. They rejigged some thinking, and then they built what it is today. Obviously, I'm not trying to say that we're going to build into the next Apple, but success doesn't always come in a straight line. And the fact that you're still here, you've made the pivot to this business model because you realized the other business model just wasn't going to work out. And now you've achieved a really big milestone that puts your stamp on this business model. Bodes well and gives me optimism, and I hope a lot of people at home feel the same way enough to say, okay, Steve, let's see what else you got over the next 6 months. Let's see how many other awards you can get from pharmaceutical companies, and then we'll talk. And I think that's all you're asking for.
That's exactly right, George. Well said. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Can't wait to have you back, and I hope that's going to be soon. All right. So, well, there's going to be. For everybody at home, though, in the meantime, you've been watching or been listening by podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple, or your favorite podcast platform to Steve McCauley, who's the CEO at Empower Clinics, trades in Canada, EPW in the US, EPWCF. Put the company in your radar. Go read the press release. Look for future hopeful press releases and interviews. And until then, thanks for joining us. Have a great day. See you next time. Hey guys, this video is over, but don't forget to help your company by liking it and even leaving a comment below. And then don't forget to help yourself by subscribing to our channel and never missing another great Agoracom small cap video.